Well, I'm here with Rudi Dicks, and I'm so pleased he's in the middle of nowhere in the bush having a well-earned bit of relaxation with his daughter. Anyway, Rudi is the head of the project management office in the private office of the South African presidency, and that's quite a job. And in fact, Rudi, it's no secret that we've given you the Creative Bureaucracy Award, and you certainly deserve it. I mean, people seem to say you're the supreme enabler, the fixer. Well, you're also the unblocker. That's my favorite word. So, unblocker is a great description. Anyway, just the first question. How important was your experience as a student activist and labor activist in doing what you do now? I'd love to know that.
Oh no, absolutely, Charles. It's a good basis of what I've grown to become, right? And thanks for this. I don't know about the title. The unblocker thing is, you're right. It's quite a unique thing, but I certainly think being an activist during the 80s, fighting apartheid, supporting grassroots movements, student movements, student representative councils have been important. It gave me an organizational sense. It gave me a sense of, only people on the ground and what they expect and what they need. Moving from that, it's just a natural progression to becoming a labor leader, an organized labor leader in COSATU, the largest federation in South Africa. And, I started off as an organizer again, very grassroots, upward kind of work, doing plant level negotiations with different firms and different companies, moving on to huge collective bargainings for sectors, huge sectors, hundreds of thousands of workers. I think that kind of experience is just absolutely just you can't not have it, in the job that I have. I think it's grounded me in what I think it's important in understanding generally the bureaucracy of the state, but not having to lose the roots that I come from, having to understand what's important from only people's perspective, and organizational dynamics are quite important. So that knowledge coming from, from an activist background, from a labor activist, to government, is just, I can't say anything more about it. It's just like absolutely grounded me into the kind of job that I am and the job that I'm doing. And I think it served me well.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you just described this, I'm thinking of all this complexity, and I'm thinking of all these people sitting around a table, and some don't like you and some love you and all of that. And you're representing all of these people. I mean, I just envy you for that experience. I think it's absolutely beautiful at many levels. I mean, obviously, therefore, you've got this vast experience of negotiation from different sides of the table, bringing together government, business, the civic worlds and community and so on. But what strikes me, and a bit like what you've been talking about, it seems to require sort of emotional intelligence, a certain sort of diplomatic skills, and being able to look at things from the other person's perspective. I mean, do you see these as core skills? And am I correct in asking that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, negotiation skills is what is key. I mean, having to bring people together. Going back to when you say this unblocking title, this fixer title requires, a huge amount of emotional, effort, not necessarily even intelligence, just effort, to be able to understand different parties, to be able to understand, specific demands, outcomes, and how one achieves that, by bringing different social actors together is a difficult task. I mean, it really is. So absolutely. I mean, those skills are quite important, and they've bode me well, and this is quite important. I mean, I think about my days as you described it now. I think of my days during the unions. Oh, those were difficult post-apartheid days. Oh gosh, you know, getting employees together, them telling you, yeah, this democracy of yours is not going to work. You know, this is my area. This has got nothing to do with the new democracy. And so difficult employers, and having to manage that, you know, and still get an outcome that is a negotiated outcome, for example, a wage settlement. It's just, you know, it's one of those things that you can only get through experience. It's only through
Yeah.
difficult moments of getting through difficult scenarios and situations, you know.
But when you were just sort of doing all of that, I mean, do you really prepare, or did you prepare? And today, do you really sort of think through who's in this room? How am I going to, you know, how does their mind work? Do you go through those types of processes in advance?
I do, but sometimes I tend to think it comes naturally in a sense. I mean, I'm quick to read someone and say, wonderful, this is a person that you can ally with and potentially get that particular individual to support your view, right? There's a difficult character, so I need to be more careful about how I you know, what I say or how I communicate, you know. Here's someone else that I would have to. So it does, but I'm quite I mean, if I should say so myself, I'm quite proud of the fact that I think I could potentially move into a room, spend 5 minutes in the room with different groups of people, and kind of read all of them and say, okay, this is the kind of person that I'm dealing with, you know.
Yeah. No,
And I think that's helped me. I mean, so the negotiating skills with employers and getting to know who's difficult and not has really helped, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of these skills, you know, they're really also partly communication skills and so on. So often undervalued, I think. And also, I mean, people, when I met you in Berlin last year, you know, you're very welcoming, you're very warm, but you're also quite light-hearted. And I'm not sure that's also important to get things over you know, to get that over the line. So I think these skills are as important as the actual technical skills. Do you think that's right?
In a difficult environment, I must be honest, the technical skills counts less, right? You know, if you want a particular outcome, you're right. I mean, if you don't have a light-hearted approach, you know, if you're not joking, if you're not trying to ease the tension, you know, in a room, for example, I recall, you know, once having different parties together around the ESCOM issue, you know, the electricity issue. It's very difficult. It's one of the tough kind of meetings. Even amongst my government colleagues, getting the same department in the room is really tough. You know, so you have to think through different ways of how one breaks down the positional kind of approaches that you have. So that kind of emotional, you know, investment in a particular process is so important, Charles. You know, the technical stuff, generally the technical stuff.
That's,
you know,
detail.
If you know what you're doing, then it's easy. Oh no, that tends to come more natural. But the difficulty is that, you know, how do you kind of, you know, do you make a joke? You crack a joke, and how do people see it? You know, and that of course is it's a different. I mean, people might not know you, so you may crack jokes, and they think, oh, what's wrong with this chap? You know, why is he cracking jokes? What does he think? This is a serious thing, you know? So you may get bashed and said, this is a serious matter. But in most instances, it's both well for you to be able to be lighthearted, to be able to, you know, have a decent conversation with someone and ask them how it is. And, you know, there's a difficult environment. And then slowly find your way into dealing with the difficult stuff, you know? So you eventually get to the difficult stuff and you have a much more easier conversation. I'd expect, and that's been my experience, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fantastically put, because in a sense, what you're saying is it's about releasing tension, and that releasing tension, in a sense, makes people feel more at ease, perhaps a bit safe and more secure, in order to actually listen in the first place. I've got another question. A lot of what you do is really brokering solutions, you know, given the job you have in the president's office and so on. And in order to do that, you sort of got various levers, I'm sure, that you know of and all of that. And now, with the pandemic, you've had to sort of broker solutions at absolute speed. Tell me a bit about some of the projects you've brokered. I mean, I'm aware of the Job Summit, the thing about widening broadband, the water licenses, and so on. Just tell us a bit about all of those three projects.
Oh, yeah, the Job Summit was a phenomenal piece of one of the more difficult negotiations. I mean, when President Ramaphosa came in, the first thing he promised was that he was going to commit to a demand that was made by labor around getting a job summit going, creating employment. He set almost an impossible time frame, and so we had to do quite a bit of tricky negotiations, right? Getting it out of the way. We had to set into motion a facilitated process. We did a colloquium. We brought ideas together. So we actual fact not only used the the social compacting forum, which is referred to as NEDLAC in South Africa. We actually got experts outside of NEDLAC to be able to give us some ideas on what could go into a job summit. So you had to broker those ideas. You had to broker negotiated views around some of these fundamental issues that you would go into an agreement. And we eventually got together a really, substantive document, 80 pages, not easy to negotiate, 80 pages of real practical commitments. For the first time, I think, it was a team effort. We had a strong government team, very committed senior officials. We had senior labor, business people involved in this. And we managed to get quite a bit of commitments. I mean, one of the things that we brought out in the job summit was this issues of levers, as you correctly say, that many of the investment or infrastructure decisions are not able to arise because there are particular challenges. So water use license, for example, is one of them. The issue of unlocking broadband and the Internet of Things, spectrum allocations, for example, is another one of them. A long list of different things that are prohibitive in many instances for private sector to invest in because they are just, they are administrative bureaucracies that just, hinder that. And so I think the role of how we've put the job summit was to try and deal with those blockages. And that's where the blocking thing came in. And I suppose that's where I spent quite a bit of time in getting water use licenses for applications. Let me use a good example. The forestry industry have been for 15 years attempting to get a water use license to do reforestation, right? To replant. And they got it as a result of our job summit agreement. After 15 years trying to get a water use license, they've got it. And that unlocked close to about 18 billion Rand of investment. And that, of course, is going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. Very interesting stuff. We were doing, for example, right now, during the COVID responses, we were able to bring together different partners inside and outside of government to look at a special dispensation for grants for individuals who are not receiving normal grants. Generally, these are unemployed working age adults. A special grant, through the work that we were able to do, we were able to facilitate, bring in experts from the banking sector, bring in the social development departments, bringing civil organizations into, developing which was a small amount, but it was important because of the lockdown as a result of COVID, that a special grant was paid, a COVID grant that we referred to. More interestingly, I just saw a very interesting article. We negotiated another compact on trying to deal with the energy challenges in South Africa. And the heading said, masterclass in details, right? And someone sent it to me, and in actual fact, popular journalists who very critical of government, actually, saying to government, you've actually did a really good job in negotiating quite a detailed compact on trying to unblock and deal with the energy challenges in South Africa. So these are really exciting stuff. It does help a little bit that we're in the president's office. I mean, there's pluses and minuses with it. The plus is that you're able to use in a sense, the presidency and say, look, the president was asking us to convene. So the plus is to convene. But the risk is that you don't also want individuals to be compliant. I mean, the idea of being a creative bureaucrat is not getting people to be compliant, but to buy into what you want. Own it. That's the tricky thing. So if you don't get the ownership in, you get compliant civil servants who tick the box. And that's the worst part of being in the public service, that you can get easily compliant. But when you see at the end of the day that you won over individuals from different departments to support your ideas and to actually buy into it and actually implement and deliver, that's the success of it. That's the nicest part of the job. It's not so much whether you're in the presidency or not.
Yeah.
whether you've actually convinced someone that what you are suggesting is the right way to do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that you were also able to negotiate about making broadband access sort of more available for students, young people, and stuff to learn and so on. I mean, the actual implications and the impact of that is just absolutely astonishing, isn't it? And I think what you did there is that might have taken 5 years. You did it sort of, well, 5 weeks or whatever, you know, you just foreshortened that period immensely. I mean, that's true, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, the COVID crisis gave us an opportunity to respond in a, I mean, if I think about, we've been debating for more than 20 years the debate around a basic income grant. Let's put the broadband thing, because it's an absolutely amazing thing where they just allowed to release spectrum, particularly in response to the COVID, and that was like in a matter of weeks, not even 5 weeks, you know.
Yeah.
But the COVID response, we've been talking about a grant for working age and adults, and you know, it's been going on for 20 years. We did it in 5 weeks, Charles. We simply said, this is the way we want to do a payment solution. This is how we're going to target. This is how we're going to be able to triangulate and ensure that they, you know, we don't, we avoid the risk of duplications and other systems, you know. And we used IT. So we basically used technology to be able to advance an argument that could see immediately something being paid, you know. And this is just, you know, I mean, the COVID thing is just an amazing thing that gave us an opportunity to see the use of technology much better in accessing. I mean, people used to argue, so how are we going to pay these individuals? Who are they? And we said, well, here they are. There are 8 million of them. I said, where did you get them? Well, we used data, and we were able to show that these are the individuals that are not getting any form of income. They're unemployed, 8 million of them. Okay, how do we register them? Well, there's different ways of how we can do them, you know. A phone these days have different and smart ways of trying to register without having people move into a center, you know. So all we did, how are we going to pay them? Well, we don't have, you know, people don't have to have long queues at the banks. You can pay them electronically through a phone, or, you know, they can collect it at different ATMs or cash, you know, so they don't have long queues. All those things that are normally complex in many ways, or people argue and tend to say they're complex and therefore they're costly. We did it in record time, in the question of weeks. You know?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, this is my sort of final question. I mean, clearly we've got these phrases: enabler, fixer, connector, unblocker, and so on. I think one of the qualities of that, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that sort of role is sort of having, in some sense, power, but no power at the same time. It's not sort of like being the big boss, but it's sort of somehow someone who weaves things together in some way. And I mean, it's like creating a beautiful recipe for some lovely meal. I know it's a silly analogy, but would you say that's true?
It does, yes, it does. I mean, just think about the bureaucrats at my level. It's easy to talk to them. Yeah. But how do I convince a minister to accept what I'm saying? Right? So it means that, you know, it's not about the political power. I don't have any political power. I'm a bureaucrat. You know, I'm not saying I'm coming on behalf of the president and we want to do this and that and that. I'm not doing that, right? That's you know, there are others who do that. They love that, you know. But it does require for you to have an ability to convince even the most senior politicians who are appointed ministers, right? And to work with them. And to say to the minister, you know, I think this is probably the best approach around how we do this, or, you know, because you can easily get through the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats are okay. The director generals are okay. They're quite warm and open, you know, and they are, you know, they also have quite a bit of confidence once you've shown that you can actually deliver on some of the stuff, you know. So it is a bit of a tricky thing, but it's I tend not to, you know, I tend not to say I come from the president's, you know, they start off, hi, how are you? I'm from the president's private office and I represent the office of the president. That's just a non-starter, man. You know, it's just it's something.
Yeah. You're basically saying, you know, let's have this is an idea. This is perhaps a vision or something we can achieve. Are you interested?
Absolutely. Because it's also in line with what, I mean, I must be honest, it's also in line with the way the president approaches things. You know, he's very amenable to trying to find an agreement, you know, social compacting, working together, partnerships, you know. Although I must say, I mean, many of us are becoming frustrated because we've done all of that now, of course. Now you have to do a little bit of the stick also now. You know, so we've done a little bit of the engagement and convincing, and of course, what is a big challenge for us in our bureaucracy is the lack of accountability. And I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
must say that. Now, you can't talk your way out of that one. You know,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no talking for that. You know, if you did not deliver on something, why did you not deliver? Did you have the resources? Did you have the capacity? Do you have the people to support you? You didn't use any of that. So your consequence. So consequence management is quite a bit of a discussion that we're having in the South African government, because I think for many, many years there was no consequences. People just did what they wanted, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And so, you know, so beyond the talking and getting people to be convinced and buying in into what you think would be an important area for a particular outcome, you'd have to, unfortunately, and that's not our responsibility, of course. That's the politicians. That's the president's responsibility. He must take to task ministers and director generals who don't perform and deliver on what their mandates are. You know.
Yeah, I suppose in summary, I suppose what we could say is obviously it's difficult. We're all in difficulties all over the world, but the bureaucracy in South Africa has been able to, through this connecting capacity that you and others in the public administration have, to be, let's call it more creative for the sake of argument. If being creative is having a good idea, trying to make it happen. I suppose we could say that, couldn't we?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the one thing. When I started off at the public service, I said I'm not being a public servant. That was my. I remember my first interview with a colleague of mine. He was then the Director General, Dr. Sean Phillips, and I said, DG, I'm coming to you, but I'm not going to be a public servant. I'm using my experience outside of the public service to try and see whether we can be creative. And he says, yeah, you're never going to get anything right. You have to follow the rules. You know, he's like a real kind of like a,
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
public servant of note. But the point about it is that, I mean, I think where I find myself in the position is that we are able to use the resources of the state in different ways to get an outcome that is desirable. You know, we are able to use you know, partnerships with different individuals outside of the state, private sector, civil society organizations, unions, you know, different organizations to achieve a particular objective. You don't necessarily have to always follow it in the way that's prescribed to you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You are able to bring in different peoples to be able to do. And I think that's the value of what we can learn as creative bureaucrats, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Partnerships are important within and outside of the state to achieve a particular you know, a particular outcome.
Well, look, it's been great talking to you, Rudi, and I just really hope we can see each other face to face again. So thank you very much, and see you
Absolutely.
soon.